I was doom scrolling one night, and I saw a girl standing at a high table, and she was pushing a thin glass slowly towards the edge. And she looked intensely at the camera and she said, "Now there's 3 ways that you could respond. You can help push, you could push back, or you could just witness." And I think a lot of us feel like witnesses right now. We are witnessing injustices near and far, big and small, and all the time. And it's easy to feel small, alone, and powerless. And I used to feel like that, small, like a tiny little sparrow. And I no longer feel like that, and I would like to share what shifted. And I'd like to start with a story. Please imagine you're in Paris. It's a hot summer day, and you're strolling near the river Seine. Your mind is on nothing in particular, but then a baboon runs past you. Then monkeys, a giraffe turns the corner, monkeys, zebras rush past, and then lions, then kaboom, kaboom, a gorilla. The whole herd storms past. You see them reach the riverside where they catch a breath, and they keep scanning the area for predators. You're doing the same before more animals can startle you again. Last summer, I joined a public art project called The Herds. These were cardboard animals fleeing climate disaster, and they would storm through cities all the way from the Congo Basin to the Arctic Circle. They would draw lots of attention and raise awareness about the effects of climate change. And I wasn't watching from the sidewalk, I was inside the herd. About 100 strangers came together in Paris. People in their 20s, in their 60s. There were artists, entrepreneurs, students, retirees, people who'd lived in Paris all their lives, and people who had just arrived. And before we ever touched the animal puppets, we started playing. We would take huge pieces of paper, crumple them up, listen how they sounded, and then watched how they moved once we breathed life into them. And we'd play games with each other, where you had to react quickly, catch something, make a noise, move out of the way, and we'd be silly together so that we would tune into each other without even talking much. And then the animal puppets were laid out. And I'll be honest, they looked dead. It looked violent, like a cardboard animal graveyard. But that was until we picked them up. And by coincidence, the first piece of cardboard I grabbed decided my exciting role in the herd as a gorilla. And these animals, they were life-size and heavy, so they required multiple people to even move them at all. And 3 of us came together on the gorilla. One person would be the front leg, holding the body like a suitcase, breathing. There would be another front leg holding the head as well. And then I'd be here as the gorilla's butt, moving the hind legs. And we would count together. 1, back leg, 2, front leg, 3, back leg, 4, front leg. Breathe. And we weren't animating a single animal, we were animating a herd. So I didn't only need to work together with my partners on the gorilla, but with everybody around me. So we'd have gazelles bump into us, body parts had lives of their own. There was a lady who struggled a little bit to find her position in the herd. She started with us on the gorilla as we were taking turns, but it was difficult and straining, and she withdrew. She thought that we were annoyed with her, that she couldn't get into the rhythm, and maybe we were. But being part of a herd meant looking out for who couldn't keep up, to slow down and to be patient with each other, and to be flexible enough to try different roles. She might not have been the fittest or the most focused, but she was the one to remind everybody that we were playing. And with that, she added a lot of character to the zebra where she found her groove. Had we all just focused on ourselves, these animals would not have moved, and this herd would just be a pile of cardboard. And over the course of those training days, I started to feel different. I started to walk differently. I felt powerful and heavy and present. So if before you'd ever ask me what my spirit animal was, I would have thought of a sparrow. But now I was embodying that gorilla. I discovered a whole other side of me. But what made me feel even more powerful was feeling that whole herd around me. Because after those clumsy first steps, we would now start to truly move together. And we would breathe with the gorilla, and we would breathe with the herd. And through the eyes of the animals, we started to be curious again with each other and with the city around us, so that as a herd, we could then storm the streets of Paris. Now, why am I telling this whole story? What stayed with me was not the spectacle, it was the feeling. What it felt like to move together, to rely on each other, and to be part of something bigger than myself. And in everyday life, we rarely get to feel that. We are taught to do things independently, to manage on our own, to be efficient and to have things figured out. And without even realizing, we end up living next to each other instead of with each other. And the grooves that we move in, they look a lot like ourselves. And it is in these bubbles that we are comfortable and miserable, because that is where we doom scroll, that is where we witness glasses break, because that is injustices happening somewhere else to people we are not connected with. And we feel like we have no influence, like we cannot make a difference. And to be fair, most people alone are powerless. I used to think that I needed an idea, a plan, a solution. I was trained to think that if I just understood a problem well enough, then the right action would follow. And I think we do a lot of that here at university. We analyze complexities, and then we design pathways to better futures. We like clear logic. If this, then that. Predictable change. But change isn't perfect, and perfect plans raise the threshold for action. And I say this as a recovering perfectionist. I've often felt called to act, but because I couldn't articulate a clear idea, or because I didn't perfectly understand complexities, I kept hesitating, afraid of failure, embarrassment, trying to figure things out on my own. And that's the feeling of the tiny sparrow, the little witness. And I don't want to feel like that. I want to feel like a gorilla as part of a herd. But then the question is, where to start without any cardboard animals? I started showing up in spaces where people were already trying to do something, even if it wasn't so clear yet what that something was. For me, that once meant walking into the city living room here in Wageningen, without a plan, and I didn't yet know what my role could be. I mostly listened. And the people I met there weren't like-minded people. They were people with lives very different from mine. I met people who fled war, who'd been homeless, or almost equally bewildering, who would study insurance policy. And so these were people with different worries, different characters, and different ways of speaking. And what connected us wasn't agreement, it is that we all wanted to contribute to the city somehow. And we started not with solutions, but with what mattered to us. For example, one person kept talking about textile waste, how absurd it felt that we keep throwing clothes away. And the idea of a clothes swap emerged, and people tried it out, people joined in. Next time, more people show up. Someone shows up, but they didn't bring clothes to share, but they have needle and threads. And groups form to repair clothes together and to show people how. Someone says, I know someone who uses saved textiles to create patchwork blankets. And other groups form to collect these blankets and share them with people who can use some support, fighting loneliness. So ideas start moving between people. And then I started to see the same pattern again and again. Is that when people notice that you care enough to try, enough to invite others in, instead of carrying everything yourself, that's when people start joining. We often see the pioneers, but not always the movement that enables action. We may not always appreciate how much of a difference it makes that someone shows up, asks a question based on their life experience, that they make a link. The zebra gets lost in the woods and the giraffe shares what it sees. It has also helped me understand what the sparrow in me actually contributes. I offer safety and patience for the ideas of others to emerge. It's precisely because I know self-doubt so well. And I can be a gorilla when I help execute those ideas. A herd isn't a group of people who agree or a group of friends. It's a group of people who stay. A group of people from different worlds who stay in the same space long enough for their differences to change what is possible. And collaboration isn't easy. We all know group work. But together we can do the hard stuff and the fun stuff so much better. We are not as fast, but we can get so much further. And no, one clothes swap doesn't solve textile waste or inequality, and one shared blanket doesn't solve loneliness. But it's about building the movement that makes it all happen, and then the actions start stacking up. So I stopped waiting for the perfect idea, and I started talking to people, to strangers actually, sometimes with nothing more than, hey, I love what you're doing, can we have a drink and talk about it? So if you're wondering where to begin, then stop waiting for clarity and start close and small. Start where people already gather. There's plenty of spaces in Wageningen, from Superette to Nu de Toekomst to Thuis to the neighborhood community centers. Talk to someone you don't know yet. Share what matters to you and see who stays. And see what animal you become when you move as part of a herd. Thank you.